The hospital ship, Solace, floated silently in the vast darkness of space, its white hull glowing faintly under the dim light of Jupiter. It was a peaceful sight, but peace was fragile in the far reaches of the solar system. The ship's mission was clear: to provide medical care to colonists and workers who lived and worked on Europa, one of Jupiter's icy moons. Inside, Dr. Laura Bennett moved through the corridors with quiet purpose. She was a woman in her early 40s, with sharp eyes that missed nothing and a calm voice that reassured everyone around her. Laura had spent years working in space hospitals, but something about this assignment felt different. Maybe it was the isolation, or maybe it was the growing rumors of unrest among the outer colonies. Captain Ryan Dawson stood on the bridge of the Solace, staring out at the endless expanse of stars. He was a tall man with graying hair and a steady gaze. His job was to keep the ship safe and ensure the crew could do their work without interruption. But lately, he couldn't shake the feeling that trouble was coming. Reports had been trickling in from nearby outposts about strange ships appearing near the edge of the system. No one knew who they were or what they wanted, but their presence was unsettling. Ryan turned to his communications officer, a young man named Daniel. "Anything new from command?" he asked. Daniel shook his head. "Nothing yet, sir. Just the usual updates." Ryan frowned. "Keep an ear out for anything unusual. I don't like the sound of these unidentified ships." Down in the medical bay, Laura checked on her patients. Most were miners injured in accidents while working on Europa's icy surface. Others were sick from exposure to the harsh environment. The medical team worked tirelessly, but resources were limited. Supplies had to be shipped in from Earth, and delays were common. Still, Laura made sure everyone received the care they needed. Her team trusted her completely, and she never let them down. That evening, as the crew settled into their routines, an alarm blared through the ship. Red lights flashed in the corridors and voices crackled over the intercom. "All hands to stations, we have incoming hostiles." Laura froze for a moment, then sprang into action. She grabbed her emergency kit and rushed to the nearest ward. Patients looked up at her with wide, frightened eyes. "Stay calm," she said firmly. "We'll get you to safety." On the bridge, Ryan barked orders. "Shields up. Arm the defensive systems." The crew scrambled to carry out his commands, but everyone knew the Solace wasn't built for battle. It was a hospital ship, designed to heal, not fight. Through the viewport, Ryan saw the enemy fleet emerge from the shadows of space. There were 5 ships, sleek and menacing, their weapons glowing with energy. They opened fire without warning, sending blasts of light streaking toward the Solace. The impact rocked the ship, throwing people off their feet. Alarms screamed as smoke filled the air. Laura heard the explosions and felt the vibrations beneath her feet. She steadied herself against a wall and shouted to her team, "Get the patients to the shelters, now!" Nurses and doctors worked quickly, wheeling beds and carrying stretchers toward the reinforced areas of the ship. Laura stayed behind to help those who couldn't move on their own. In the chaos, Ryan tried to make sense of the situation. Who were these attackers? Why would anyone target a hospital ship? He reached for the comm system. "This is Captain Dawson of the Solace. We are a neutral medical vessel. Cease your attack immediately." There was no response. Another blast hit the ship, knocking out part of the power grid. Lights flickered and the hum of machinery grew weaker. Ryan clenched his fists. "Send a distress signal to Earth Command. Tell them we're under attack." The communications officer nodded and began typing furiously. But deep down, Ryan knew help wouldn't arrive in time. The Solace was too far from Earth, and the enemy was already closing in. Laura worked tirelessly, moving from patient to patient. She patched wounds, administered medicine, and offered words of comfort. Despite the danger, she refused to panic. Her training kicked in, guiding her actions even as fear gnawed at the edges of her mind. One of the nurses, a young woman named Emily, approached her. "Dr. Bennett, we can't hold out much longer. The oxygen levels are dropping." "I know," Laura replied. "Just keep doing what you're doing. We'll get through this." Back on the bridge, Ryan watched as the enemy ships surrounded the Solace. Their weapons glowed brighter, ready to fire again. He turned to his first officer, a man named Greg. "Any word from Earth?" Greg shook his head. "Not yet, sir. But they'll come. They have to." Ryan nodded, though doubt clouded his thoughts. He had faith in Earth's military, but time was running out. The Solace's shields were failing and the ship's structural integrity was compromised. Another direct hit could tear the vessel apart. Suddenly, a transmission came through. A cold mechanical voice echoed over the speakers. "Surrender your ship. Resistance is futile." Ryan's jaw tightened. "Never," he muttered under his breath. He activated the comm system. "This is Captain Dawson. You're attacking a hospital ship. Innocent lives are at risk. Stand down immediately." The response was chilling. "Your compliance ensures survival. Refuse and you will be destroyed." Ryan glanced at his crew. Fear was etched on their faces, but determination burned in their eyes. They weren't fighters, but they weren't cowards either. "We won't give up," he said firmly. "Not while there's still hope." As the enemy prepared to fire again, Laura and her team worked feverishly to save as many lives as possible. The ship groaned under the strain of another blast, and sparks rained down from the ceiling. Laura shielded a young boy with her body, whispering softly to him, "It's going to be okay. Just hold on." Time seemed to slow as the battle raged on. Each second felt like an eternity. The Solace was battered and bruised, but it hadn't broken yet. Ryan stood firm on the bridge, refusing to surrender. Laura fought to keep her patience alive, her hands steady despite the chaos around her. Together, they held on to the slimmest thread of hope. That help would arrive before it was too late. And somewhere in the distance, Earth's war fleet was already on the move, racing toward Europa to answer the call for aid. Back on Earth, Admiral Nathan Cole sat in his office at Central Command. The room was dimly lit, with screens displaying maps of the solar system and live updates from various outposts. Nathan was a man in his late 50s, with sharp features and a no-nonsense attitude. He had spent decades serving in Earth's military, rising through the ranks to become one of its most respected leaders. His gray hair was neatly trimmed, and his uniform was always spotless. But tonight, there was tension in his posture. Something big was happening, and he could feel it. The distress signal from the Solace had just reached Earth. Nathan listened to the message again, his jaw tightening as he heard Captain Dawson's voice crackle over the comms. "This is Captain Dawson of the hospital ship Solace. We are under attack by an unknown fleet. Shields are failing. Request immediate assistance." Nathan leaned back in his chair, his mind racing. A hospital ship? Attacked? It was unthinkable. Such vessels were protected under interstellar law. Neutral zones meant for healing, not combat. Whoever was behind this had crossed a line that couldn't be ignored. He stood up and walked to the large window behind his desk, staring out at the glowing blue curve of Earth below. Somewhere out there, innocent lives were in danger and they needed help. "Lieutenant," Nathan called into the intercom. "Assemble the fleet. We're deploying immediately." Minutes later, the command center buzzed with activity. Officers rushed to their stations, typing furiously on keyboards and speaking into headsets. Screens flickered to life, showing the positions of Earth's warships scattered across the solar system. Nathan stepped onto the main platform, his presence commanding attention. "Listen up," he said, his voice firm but calm. "The Solace is under attack near Europa. We don't know who's responsible, but we do know this. They've violated every rule we stand for. Our mission is clear: protect the Solace and neutralize the threat." The room erupted into murmurs, but Nathan silenced them with a raised hand. "Time is critical. The fleet will warp to Europa within the hour. Prepare all ships for combat. This isn't just about saving lives. It's about sending a message. No one attacks our people and gets away with it." Among the officers listening to Nathan's orders was Lieutenant Karen Hayes. She was a skilled pilot in her early 30s, known for her quick reflexes and fearless attitude. Karen had grown up dreaming of flying among the stars, and now she commanded a squadron of fighter jets aboard the Eclipse, Earth's most advanced battlecruiser. As soon as the order came down, she sprang into action, heading to the hangar bay to prep her team. Karen's squadron consisted of 12 pilots, each highly trained and ready for anything. They gathered around her as she gave them a final briefing. "We're going in hot," she said, her voice steady. "The enemy has already damaged the Solace, so our first priority is defense. Protect the hospital ship at all costs. Once we secure the area, we'll take the fight to them. Understood?" "Yes, ma'am," the pilots replied in unison. Karen nodded. "Good. Stay sharp out there. Let's bring those people home." Meanwhile, on the Solace, the situation was growing more dire by the minute. The ship's shields were almost completely gone, and the hull was riddled with holes. Fires burned in several sections, and the air was thick with smoke. Laura Bennett worked tirelessly alongside her team, trying to keep patients alive despite the chaos. Her hands moved quickly as she stitched a wound on a miner's arm, her focus unwavering even as another explosion rocked the ship. "We're running out of oxygen," Emily, one of the nurses, said urgently. "The generators can't keep up." Laura glanced at the monitors lining the walls. The numbers were dropping fast. "Get everyone into the sealed wards," she instructed. "Use portable tanks if you have to. We can't afford to lose anyone." Captain Ryan Dawson remained on the bridge, coordinating what little defense the Solace could muster. The crew had managed to activate a few automated turrets, but they were no match for the enemy fleet. Each blast shook the ship harder than the last, and Ryan knew they couldn't hold out much longer. "Any word from Earth?" he asked Greg, his first officer. Greg checked the comm system. "They're coming, sir. ETA is 30 minutes. Ryan clenched his fists. 30 minutes might as well have been 30 years. "Keep trying to contact them, and tell engineering to prepare the emergency thrusters. If we have to make a run for it, we'll need every bit of speed we can get." As the enemy ship circled closer, a new transmission came through. The same cold mechanical voice spoke again. "Surrender your vessel. Resistance is futile." Ryan's eyes narrowed. "Not a chance," he muttered. He activated the comms system. "This is Captain Dawson. You're attacking a hospital ship filled with unarmed civilians. There's still time to stand down and avoid further bloodshed." The response was chilling. "Your compliance ensures survival. Refuse and you will be destroyed." Ryan turned to his crew. "Hold your ground. Help is coming." On the Eclipse, Karen and her squadron prepared to launch. The massive battle cruiser warped into position near Europa, its engines roaring as it emerged from hyperspace. Through the cockpit windows, Karen could see the Solace in the distance, its once pristine hull battered and scarred. Enemy ships swarmed, around it like predators circling prey. "This is Lieutenant Hayes," Karen said over the comms. "All squadrons prepare for combat. Target enemy fighters first. Keep their attention off the Solace." The Eclipse unleashed a barrage of missiles, scattering the smaller ships. Explosions lit up the darkness of space as Karen led her squadron into the fray. Her fighter darted between debris fields, dodging enemy fire while returning precise shots of her own. One by one, hostile fighters fell to her team's coordinated attacks. Inside the Solace, Laura felt a glimmer of hope as the sound of distant explosions grew louder. Reinforcements had arrived. She shouted to her team, "Earth's fleet is here. Keep moving, we're almost safe." But the battle wasn't over yet. The mercenaries regrouped, focusing their firepower on the Eclipse. Admiral Cole watched the chaos unfold from the cruiser's bridge, his expression grim. "Deploy the second wave," he ordered. "We need to overwhelm them before they recover." More ships joined the fight, surrounding the mercenaries and cutting off their escape routes. Karen spotted the enemy flagship, a massive vessel bristling with weapons, and set her sights on it. "I'm going after their leader," she said to her team. "Cover me." With her squadron providing backup, Karen flew straight toward the flagship. Dodging laser blasts and evading tractor beams, she maneuvered her fighter into position. Timing her shot perfectly, she fired a missile directly at the ship's engines. The impact sent the flagship spinning, its systems disabled. On the bridge of the Eclipse, Nathan received confirmation of the flagship's disablement. "Good work, Lieutenant," he said over the comms. "Now let's finish this." The remaining Mercenaries scrambled to retreat, but Earth's fleet closed in, trapping them. Nathan hailed the captured ships. "Power down your weapons and surrender. Resist, and you will be destroyed." One by one, the enemy vessels complied, their lights dimming as they powered down. The battle was won, but the cost had been high. Damage reports poured in from the Solace, detailing the injuries and losses suffered during the attack. As rescue shuttles from the Eclipse docked with the Solace, Laura finally allowed herself a moment to breathe. She stood beside Ryan, watching, as survivors boarded the larger ship. "We made it," she said softly. Ryan nodded, though his expression remained somber. "Thanks to Earth's fleet. But this shouldn't have happened in the first place." Admiral Cole vowed to find answers. "Whoever hired these mercenaries will pay," he declared. "No one attacks our people and walks away unpunished." For Laura, Ryan, Karen, and countless others, the memory of the Solace would serve as a reminder of humanity's resilience and the sacrifices made in the name of peace. The battle around the Solace had finally begun to turn in Earth's favor. The Eclipse and its fleet had arrived just in time, their firepower overwhelming the mercenaries who had dared to attack a hospital ship. Lieutenant Karen Hayes led her, squadron with precision, weaving through the chaos of space as laser blasts streaked past her fighter. Her heart pounded in her chest, but years of training kept her hands steady on the controls. She knew the stakes, every second counted, and failure wasn't an option. Karen's eyes locked onto the enemy flagship, a massive vessel that loomed like a predator in the darkness. It was the center of the mercenaries' operations, directing their attacks and keeping them organized. If she could disable it, the rest of the fleet would fall apart. "This is Hayes," she said into her comms, her voice calm despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "I'm targeting the flagship. Keep those fighters off my tail." Her squadron responded immediately, forming a protective screen around her as she pushed her fighter to its limits. Dodging incoming fire, Karen lined up her shot. The flagship's engines glowed faintly against the backdrop of Europa's icy surface, and she waited for the perfect moment. When the enemy ship turned slightly, exposing a weak point, she fired. A missile streaked through space, striking the flagship's engine compartment with a brilliant explosion. The massive vessel shuddered, its systems failing as it drifted, helplessly. On the bridge of the Eclipse, Admiral Nathan Cole watched the flagship's disablement with satisfaction. His sharp eyes scanned the battlefield, assessing the situation. The mercenaries were losing cohesion, their formation crumbling under the relentless assault from Earth's fleet. "Good work, Lieutenant," he said over the comms. "Now let's clean this up." Orders flew across the fleet as more ships moved into position. Smaller fighters chased down stragglers while larger cruisers boxed in the remaining mercenaries. One by one, the enemy vessels powered down their weapons, surrendering to avoid destruction. Nathan leaned forward in his chair, his expression grim. "Prepare boarding parties," he instructed. "We need answers." Back on the Solace, Captain Ryan Dawson felt a wave of relief wash over him as the sounds of battle began to fade. The enemy had stopped firing, and the shaking of the ship subsided. For the first time in hours, there was silence, or at least as close to silence as they could get with alarms still blaring and smoke filling the corridors. Ryan turned to Greg, his first officer. "Status report," he demanded. Greg checked the screens in front of him. "Shields are completely gone, sir. Hull integrity is at 30%. Life support is holding, for now." Ryan nodded. "Get engineering to prioritize repairs, and tell medical we're sending evac shuttles as soon as possible." In the medical bay, Laura Bennett worked tirelessly alongside her team. The arrival of reinforcements had given them hope, but the damage was done. Supplies were running dangerously low, and many patients were in critical condition. Laura moved from bed to bed, checking vitals and administering what little medicine remained. Her hands trembled with exhaustion, but she refused to stop. Every life mattered, and she wouldn't let anyone slip away if she could help it. Emily, one of the nurses, approached her with wide eyes. "Dr. Bennett, the oxygen levels are dropping again. We can't keep this up much longer." Laura took a deep breath, forcing herself to stay calm. "We'll manage. Prioritize the most critical cases. Use portable tanks if you have to. Just keep everyone breathing." As rescue shuttles from the Eclipse docked with the Solace, the crew sprang into action. Patients were carefully loaded onto stretchers and carried to safety, their faces pale but hopeful. Laura stayed behind until the last patient was evacuated, making sure no one was left behind. When she finally stepped onto the shuttle herself, her legs felt like lead. She collapsed into a seat, closing her eyes as the shuttle detached from the battered hospital ship. On board the Eclipse, Admiral Cole prepared to interrogate the captured mercenaries. He stood in the detention bay, his arms crossed as a group of prisoners was brought before him. Their leader, a tall man with cold eyes and a scar running down his cheek, stepped forward. His name was Victor Kale, and he radiated arrogance even, in defeat. "Why did you attack the Solace?" Nathan asked, his voice low and dangerous. Kale smirked. "Orders are orders. You know how it works." Nathan's jaw tightened. "Who gave you those orders?" Kyle shrugged. "Someone who pays well. That's all I know." Nathan didn't believe him for a second, but he also knew that breaking Kale would take time. He turned to the guards. "Lock him up. We'll get the truth out of him later." Meanwhile, Karen returned to the Eclipse after her successful mission. She climbed out of her fighter, her helmet tucked under one arm. Her face was streaked with sweat, and her uniform bore scorch marks from near misses during the fight. But she was alive, and so were countless others because of her bravery. As she walked toward the debriefing room, she passed Admiral Cole in the corridor. "Good work out there, Lieutenant," Nathan said, nodding in approval. Karen saluted. "Thank you, sir. Just doing my job." Nathan placed a hand on her shoulder. "Your job saved lives today, don't forget that." Inside the debriefing room, Karen joined her squadron for a quick meeting. They were tired but proud, knowing they had made a difference. "We did our part," Karen told them. "But this isn't over. Those mercenaries didn't act alone. Someone hired them, and we need to find out who." Back on the Solace, Ryan surveyed the damage. The once pristine hospital ship was barely recognizable, its halls littered with debris and its walls scorched from explosions. It would take months to repair, if it could be repaired at all. Ryan clenched his fists, anger boiling beneath the surface. How could anyone justify attacking a hospital ship? What kind of monster would target unarmed civilians? Laura found him, standing in the ruined medical bay, staring at the empty beds where patients had once lain. "We did everything we could," she said softly. Ryan nodded, though his expression remained somber. "It shouldn't have come to this. None of this should have happened." "It's not your fault," Laura replied. "You held them off long enough for help to arrive. That's what matters." Ryan sighed. "I just wish it hadn't cost so much." As the Eclipse carried survivors back toward Earth, the mood aboard the ship was bittersweet. The battle had been won, but the scars of the attack would linger for a long time. Laura sat in the mess hall, sipping a cup of tea as she reflected on everything that had happened. She thought about the patients she had saved and the ones she hadn't been able to save. The weight of it all pressed down on her, but she reminded herself that she had done her best. Karen sat nearby, her mind racing with thoughts of the mercenaries and whoever had hired them. She couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. Someone out there wanted to send a message, and Earth needed to be ready for whatever came next. Admiral Cole stood on the bridge of the Eclipse, staring out at the stars. He had spent his entire career protecting Earth and its people, but this attack had shaken him to his core. The Solace was supposed to be a symbol of peace, a place where lives were saved, not taken. Whoever was behind this had declared war, not just on Earth but on humanity itself, and Nathan vowed to make them pay. For now, the immediate threat had been neutralized. But as the Eclipse warped back toward Earth, carrying the survivors of the Solace and the captured mercenaries, one thing was clear. The galaxy was changing. New enemies were emerging, and old rules no longer applied. Earth's fleet had proven its strength, but the real challenge lay ahead. The Eclipse drifted silently through space as it made its way back to Earth, carrying the survivors of the Solace and the captured mercenaries. The ship's corridors were quiet now, but the tension remained thick in the air. Everyone aboard knew that while the battle had been won, the war was far from over. Admiral Nathan Cole stood on the bridge, staring at the vast expanse of stars outside the viewport. His mind raced with questions. Who had ordered the attack on the Solace? What did they hope to gain? And most importantly, how could Earth prepare for whatever came next? In the detention bay, Victor Kale sat alone in his cell, his cold eyes fixed on the wall. He refused to speak, no matter how many times the interrogators tried to break him. They showed him footage of the Solace, its battered hull, and the faces of the wounded. They reminded him of the lives lost during the attack. But Kale only smirked, his arrogance unshaken. "You'll never find out who hired us," he said finally. "And even if you do, it won't matter." Nathan watched the interrogation from a nearby observation room. He clenched his fists, frustrated by Kale's defiance. "He's hiding something," he muttered to one of his officers. "Keep pushing him. We need answers." While the interrogations continued, Laura Bennett rested in her quarters aboard the Eclipse. She lay on her bunk, staring at the ceiling, replaying the events of the past few days in her mind. The explosions, the screams, the desperate scramble to save lives, it all felt like a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. Yet despite everything, she had managed to keep going. Her training had kicked in when it mattered most, and she had saved as many people as she could. Still, the weight of the losses pressed down on her. A knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. "Come in," she called softly. Captain Ryan Dawson entered, his face lined with exhaustion. "How are you holding up?" he asked, sitting down on the edge of her bed. Laura sighed. "I've been better. It's hard not to think about what happened." Ryan nodded. "I know. I feel the same way, but we did everything we could. That's what matters." Laura looked at him, her eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you, Ryan, for everything. If you hadn't kept the enemy off our backs for so long, none of us would have made it." Ryan smiled faintly. "We're a team, that's what we do." As they talked, Lieutenant Karen Hayes prepared her squadron for the journey back to Earth. The pilots gathered in the hangar bay, their faces tired but determined. Karen stood before them, her voice steady as she spoke. "We stopped the mercenaries, but this isn't the end. Someone out there wanted the Solace destroyed, and we need to figure out why. Until we do, we can't let our guard down." The pilots nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. One of them, a young man named Chris, raised his hand. "Do you think they'll try again, ma'am?" Karen hesitated before answering. "I don't know, but if they do, we'll be ready." Back on the bridge, Admiral Cole received an update from Earth Command. Intelligence analysts had begun piecing together clues about the mercenaries' origins. Traces of encrypted communications suggested they had been hired by a shadowy organization operating in the outer colonies. The group's motives were unclear, but their actions hinted at something bigger, a challenge to Earth's authority in the solar system. Nathan turned to his communications officer. "Send a message to all outposts. Increase security measures and stay alert. If these mercenaries were willing to attack a hospital ship, no target is safe." Hours later, the Eclipse entered Earth's orbit. The planet's blue surface glowed brightly against the blackness of space, a reminder of what they were fighting to protect. As the ship docked at a military station, Nathan stepped onto the platform to address the crew. "You've done your duty," he said, his voice filled with pride. "But our work is far from over. The Solace may have survived, but the threat remains. Stay vigilant and remember, Earth depends on us." The survivors of the Solace disembarked slowly, their faces reflecting a mix of relief and sorrow. Some were reunited with loved ones, tears streaming down their cheeks. Others walked alone, their pain too deep for words. Laura and Ryan stayed close, supporting each other as they stepped onto solid ground for the first time in days. In the days that followed, Earth launched a full investigation into the attack. Experts pored over data from the mercenaries' ships, searching for any trace of their employers. Meanwhile, Nathan worked tirelessly to strengthen Earth's defenses. He ordered the construction of new warships and increased patrols near the outer colonies. If another attack came, Earth would be ready. Karen returned to her squadron, eager to resume training. She pushed herself harder than ever, knowing that the next battle could come at any moment. Her determination inspired her team, and together, they honed their skills to perfection. "We can't afford to lose focus," she told them. Not now. As weeks turned into months, life began to return to normal, or as close to normal as it could get. The Solace was repaired and sent back into service, its crew more cautious but just as dedicated as before. Laura threw herself into her work, finding comfort in helping others heal. Ryan remained steadfast in his role as captain, vowing never to let another attack catch them off guard. But the memory of the attack lingered, a scar on the hearts of everyone involved. For Laura, Ryan, Karen, and countless others, the Solace served as a reminder of humanity's resilience and the sacrifices made in the name of peace. They had faced unimaginable danger and emerged stronger because of it. And though the galaxy was changing, they knew one thing for certain: Earth would always fight to protect its people. On a quiet evening, Laura stood on the observation deck of the newly repaired Solace, gazing out at the stars. Ryan joined her, his presence calming. "Do you think we'll ever know who was behind the attack?" she asked softly. Ryan shook his head. "Maybe. Maybe not. But whoever they are, they underestimated us, and that was their mistake." Laura smiled faintly. "We're survivors, aren't we?" Ryan nodded. "Always." Together they watched as the ship drifted deeper into space, carrying hope and healing to those who needed it most. The scars of the past would fade with time, but the lessons learned would never be forgotten. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, as a team, as a family, and as defenders of humanity's future. Months had passed since the attack on the Solace, but its shadow still loomed over Earth and its colonies. The galaxy seemed quieter now, as if holding its breath, waiting for the next move in a game no one fully understood. Admiral Nathan Cole sat in his office at Central Command, staring at a map of the solar system displayed on the wall. Red markers dotted the outer colonies, locations where strange activity had been reported. Ships disappearing without explanation, outposts going dark, and encrypted messages intercepted from unknown sources. It was clear that whoever had orchestrated the attack on the Solace wasn't done. Nathan leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. The investigation had uncovered fragments of information, but nothing concrete. The mercenaries captured during the battle refused to talk, and Victor Kyle remained an enigma. His smug grin haunted Nathan every time he thought about the man. "Someone is testing us," Nathan muttered to himself. But why? Karen Hayes stood in the hangar bay of the Eclipse, overseeing maintenance on her squadron's fighters. She moved between the sleek ships, inspecting each one with a critical eye. Her team worked efficiently, their movements practiced and precise. Ever since returning to Earth, Karen had pushed herself and her pilots harder than ever. Training sessions were longer, drills more intense. She knew they couldn't afford to be caught off guard again. As she walked past one of the fighters, Chris approached her holding a data pad. "Lieutenant, we've got something you should see," he said, his voice tense. Karen took the pad and scanned the information. It was a report from an outpost near Saturn, a mining colony that had gone silent overnight. No distress signal, no signs of struggle, just silence. "What do you think happened?" Chris asked. Karen frowned. "I don't know yet. But it's not a coincidence. Not after what happened to the Solace." She headed straight to Nathan's office, the data pad clutched tightly in her hand. When she arrived, Nathan was already reviewing the same report. He looked up as she entered. "Lieutenant Hayes," he said, gesturing for her to sit. "Tell me your thoughts." Karen hesitated before speaking. "Sir, this feels like a pattern. First the Solace, now this outpost. Whoever is behind this, is targeting vulnerable locations. They're testing our response times, our defenses, and they're doing it quietly so we can't trace them. Nathan nodded. That's what I'm thinking too. Which means we need to act fast. He stood and walked to the map on the wall, pointing to the red markers. These incidents are scattered, but they're all in remote areas. If we send ships to investigate, we risk spreading ourselves too thin. But if we ignore them, we're inviting disaster. Karen crossed her arms. What's the plan, sir? Nathan turned to face her, his expression grim. We'll deploy a small task force to investigate the missing outpost. You'll lead the mission. Take your squadron and 2 cruisers for backup. Be ready for anything. Karen saluted. Understood, sir. The journey to the outpost near War, Saturn took several days. As the Eclipse and its escort cruisers approached the location, the mood aboard the ships grew tense. The outpost was eerily quiet, its lights dimmed and its comm systems offline. Karen led her squadron in a sweep of the area, scanning for any signs of life or hostile activity. Nothing, Chris reported over the comms. It's like everyone just vanished. Karen's fighter hovered near the outpost's main structure, her eyes scanning the surface for clues. Keep looking, she instructed. They wouldn't have left without a reason. Suddenly, her sensors picked up movement inside the outpost. A group of figures emerged, clad in dark armor and carrying weapons. They weren't mercenaries. They were soldiers, highly trained and disciplined. Karen's heart raced as she realized who they might be working for. This isn't random, she said into her comms. These guys are professionals. Fall back to the cruisers. We need reinforcements. The enemy opened fire, their weapons cutting through space with deadly accuracy. Karen's squadron scattered, dodging blasts as they retreated toward the Eclipse. The cruisers moved into position, unleashing a barrage of missiles that forced the attackers to take cover. On board the Eclipse, Nathan monitored the situation from the bridge. Lieutenant Hayes, report, he demanded. We've engaged hostiles, sir, Karen replied. They're organized, well-equipped. This isn't a raid, it's a message. Nathan clenched his fists. Hold your ground. Reinforcements are en route. Back at the outpost, Laura Bennett found herself in the middle of the chaos. She had been part of a medical team sent to assist with the investigation, hoping to find survivors. Instead, she and her team were pinned down by enemy. Fire trapped inside the outpost's medical bay. Stay low, Laura shouted to her team as another explosion shook the building. Smoke filled the air, making it hard to breathe. She grabbed a first aid kit and crawled toward one of the injured soldiers. We need to get out of here. Ryan Dawson led a group of engineers trying to repair the outpost's damaged systems. If we can restore power, we can activate the shields, he told his team. Keep working. Outside, Karen's squadron regrouped and launched a counterattack. Their fighters darted through the battlefield, targeting the enemy's command units. Explosions lit up the darkness as the tide began to turn. Slowly but surely the attackers were pushed back. Inside the outpost, Laura and her team finally managed to escape, sprinting toward the Eclipse's shuttles. Ryan's efforts paid off as the outpost's shields flickered to life, providing much-needed protection. The remaining enemy forces retreated, vanishing into the void of space as quickly as they had appeared. When the dust settled, Karen landed her fighter on the Eclipse and rushed to the bridge. Nathan greeted her with a nod. Good work, Lieutenant. Any idea who they were? Karen shook her head. Not yet, sir, but they weren't ordinary mercenaries. These were soldiers, part of something bigger. Nathan sighed. Then we're dealing with more than just rogue factions. Someone out there is building an army. Laura and Ryan joined them, both visibly shaken but alive. We need to warn the colonies, Laura said. If they're targeting outposts, no one is safe, Nathan agreed. Earth will issue a system-wide alert. We'll increase patrols and fortify key locations. But until we know who's behind this, we're fighting blind. As the Eclipse prepared to return to Earth, Karen stood on the observation deck, staring out at the stars. The galaxy was vast and beautiful, but it was also dangerous. She thought about the people they had saved, the lives lost, and the battles yet to come. Whatever lay ahead, she knew one thing for certain. Humanity would stand together. For Laura, Ryan, Karen, and everyone else involved, The fight wasn't over. The scars of the past reminded them of what was at stake, but they also fueled their determination to protect the future. Together, they would face whatever challenges came their way, one step at a time.